There's so much universal change taking place right now in this world. It's actually mind-blowing to see all of the messages that have been delivered through the spiritual community over the past couple of years are coming into fruition. Like, as we speak, almost overnight, it feels like an entire world is being torn down, an entire world that was built off of an illusion. And then this entire world that world had convinced the entire world was an illusion is coming into reality. Everything that we have been diving into and exploring as individuals is actually being shown as what is true. The understanding that the power is literally in your hands, that it always has been, and that when you call that power back to you and you choose from a conscious place where you place that power, that energy, that focus, the world changes into something so beautiful, so different than what we're used to. And it's happening now. All of that work that we've been doing, all of the shadows that we've been healing, that we've been releasing, both individually and collectively, all the mindsets that we've been breaking, all the beliefs that you've been instilling and absorbing and embodying, that's becoming our reality, and it's going to continue to become our reality. So don't stop now. Keep pushing forward in this crucial time. Keep coming home to yourself. Keep speaking positivity and goodness and richness into your life and into your communities, into your heart space. Our heart spaces as a community, as a world, are opening to the point where we cannot deny what is okay and what isn't okay anymore. We can't deny what is good and what is not good. It's becoming so clear so quickly. Now, what isn't clear is exactly why we haven't been publicly warned about the reality of a severe solar storm hitting Earth in this lifetime, and what that actually means for how significantly it is going to affect life here on Earth. As they've been tracking these cycles for, over 100 years, there's no way that they couldn't have predicted what I'm going to explain to you is sure to come in our lifetime for sure. But I'll get into more specifics as we go on in this video. So a little backstory. Myself, I used to have visions about the solar storms about 3 years ago. And I wasn't sure if what I was seeing at the time was, a realistic vision. Was it a premonition? Was it a metaphorical vision? Which is what I actually took it as for a very long time. And now that I've been very actively working to understand, progress, harness, grow my gifts, my psychic abilities, my clairsenses come in all sorts of shapes. Like, I sometimes sometimes I actually see pictures, sometimes it's just repeated visions, like kind of like a movie it comes in all sorts of ways. But it was about 2019 I started to see visions of, and public service announcement. Yes, I'm warning you guys about something here, but everyone does not have to worry. It's just that we need to prepare. So what I would see is fire and chaos and a little bit of anarchy amongst the people. But I would be meditating either alone or with my partner. I am a twin flame, awakened divine feminine, in connection with my other half for about 14 or 15 years now. And so this is a very real journey. I'm not just jumping into this spiritual thing, on a whim. And so I take this very seriously, and what I'm about to say to you guys, I do take very seriously. And I'm not going to say that I can guarantee everything that I'm saying, of course not, but this is just what I know for truth. I'm going to share with you exactly why that is, and hopefully, you'll take it amongst yourselves to just do your own research. That's all I'm actually really asking by making this at all, is that you all look into some things for yourselves just so that you can be aware, be prepared. So you'll start to see, I'm sure some of you are very well aware, about the effects that the solar flares, the CMEs, the electromagnetic energy, all that stuff is having on different systems across Earth. And now what do I mean by that? So there's been radio blackouts, right? There's been GPS issues. There's been satellites literally falling from the sky, burning up in the atmosphere. And there's also already been effects on the underwater internet cables in Africa on the last solar cycle. And so if you look into it right now, you will see Earth is not prepared. We're not prepared for what is coming now. Human beings are going to be more than fine. We are going to lose some critical infrastructure. That is happening. And personally, I believe it's happening this year. I see somewhere potentially around August. And so what that means is radios could potentially be going off entirely. We won't be able to communicate with like planes, ships, GPS systems will become completely inaccurate, And, there's a lot of very big industries that rely heavily on this, even just as simple as finance to media. Satellites in low Earth orbit could suffer more permanently in a rough enough storm. They could drift out of their typical position thanks to the drag after the radiation boosts the density of their surrounding atmosphere. That could lead to collision in orbit or to them crashing and burning in the atmosphere, which we have already seen in the Starlink fleet. That storm was considered really mild compared to what is coming, and we know this. CMEs, the coronal mass ejections, in contrast, provide a longer response window for us, like probably about a half a day, they say right now. Sometimes longer. We can see them coming, but when they do arrive, they can cause on-the-ground devastation, like the CME that hit the planet in 1989. It took down the whole Quebec power grid, knocked out like 6 million people's power for 9+ hours, interfering with other parts of the North American grid and causing damage in Europe.
Lee and Christian, these coronal mass ejections from the sun were first observed on Wednesday, and they've started to reach the Earth this afternoon. As the solar storm peaks tonight, we could see the northern lights, but it's the effects on the ground that the power companies will be monitoring.
They can induce currents that flow through railroad tracks, underground pipelines, power grids, and in extreme cases, they can cause blackouts.
In 1989, a solar storm knocked out power for about 6 million people around Montreal, Canada for 10 hours. Similar to hurricanes and tornadoes, solar storms are measured on a 5-point scale. This one is forecast to be a G4 level storm, and the last time we had a G5 level storm was October 2003.
Everything that we do these days is connected to some kind of device, and so we're probably more vulnerable these days than we ever have been.
But Dr. Khanna says we're also smarter and more prepared for it. As ground currents surge during a solar storm, transformers can become overwhelmed and fail. That's where mitigation efforts begin.
A lot of power companies put up these large capacitor banks, which can basically block the magnetic field that is inducing the currents that are causing the geomagnetically induced currents. And they can also do what's called load shedding.
By reducing the amount of electricity they're sending out and preemptively cutting connections, they can minimize surges. Some of this boils down to the luck of how the storm is directed at the Earth, so it's hard to predict the extent of impacts.
I'm not overly concerned, to be honest, but it's never a bad thing to just be ready.
To have enough energy to cause issues, solar storms usually need to occur alongside a solar maximum, and that doesn't happen until next year. An extreme solar storm during a solar maximum that's directed at the Earth happens on average about once per century, and the last one was the Carrington event back in 1859.
The bad news is we are probably overdue for it. Not this year, but perhaps. I'm not guaranteeing anything. I don't want to guarantee anything, but it hasn't happened in a while. So we'll see what happens next year.
Now, tonight's solar storm won't be anything like the Carrington event. That storm took down telegraph systems all over Europe and North America, but it was several orders of magnitude more powerful. Lee and Christian?
The risk is the highest, not for electric current traveling locally, like from a nearby substation to your home, your school, or your office, but for power traveling to the substations from larger central facilities where power is generated. This is what I see possibly, blowing, meaning a lot of people are going to suffer a blackout at the same time, a significant amount of people. And because the US is connected to Canada's grids, is separated into their 3 grids, if we lose a major grid, it's going to be really, really hard for another functional grid to compensate, and the chances of that one holding out are pretty slim. Now, of course, in the warnings that are being presented right now in the media, which are very few, which is what's concerning, and considering they've been tracking these, for quite a significant amount of time, we knew we were approaching this major point of solar activity for a very long time. But unfortunately, because of the inability to predict what or when could happen, and because of the way society has been shaped into being, manipulated to only knowing what they want us to know, essentially, we weren't told in time to stop this. Not that it could have been stopped. This is something that's very, very positive for the planet. But, had more heads been in the pot, we probably could have came up with some more solutions and protected a little bit better than we are going to have time to now, which is why I am making this video. If I'm wrong, oh well, you guys can judge me, call me crazy, hate me, do whatever you need to do to make yourselves feel better and move on, please. But if I'm right, I'm hoping that I'm still at least helping like a handful of you. So what they tell us is, in a major storm, your phone's chip should be fine, your toaster should be fine, but you won't have any power, so how are you going to charge anything? Satellites go down, how are you going to have any power or any cell service? Satellites can suffer physical damage from the particles, including these supercharged electrons that will hurtle right into the hardware and just completely make it dysfunction. And the biggest worry, the undersea cables that allow internet to travel around the world. There's a huge chance, and I foresee this happening, that at least somewhere in major parts of the world, probably knocking it all out, they're not gonna be able to withstand the amount of energy that comes down. So we're going to lose interconnectivity between continents, preventing people from accessing websites that store data globally. A National Academy of Sciences report estimates that a truly disastrous solar storm would cost approximately $2 trillion to recover from just in the first year. Not only are we going to have to replace burnt out transformers and other equipment, but every hour of an outage that's going to be lasting, I think weeks, months, will take a tremendous toll, putting our economy and daily life on hold, causing us to have to rebuild. So they say a catastrophic solar storm is a low frequency, high consequence event, which means that it's very urgent, sure, but yes, rare. At least now the governments are paying attention. Scientists can't predict solar flares, at least not yet. The best that they can do is probability models based on, previous history and the spots that are coming on the sun's surface. And, they're working on all these AI-labored models that are hopefully improving this guesswork. And they can observe the flares, and they can notice certain things that are coming, but without the use of these satellites for imagery and for data, when those start to go, it's going to be quite difficult to predict these things, which is why I've literally been trying my darndest to make a lot of sense of what I'm getting and try to stay in the best vibration so that I can be clear, to try to warn as many people in the affected areas as possible. For ourselves here in the Okanagan, we're on the 50th latitude north, and that's one of the hotspot for what's going to be hit. I don't know why. I don't know if I read that somewhere or if it just came to my head, but that's true. We need to know, though, now what to do, right? Because we can take some steps. You know, we could have protected the grid against some big hits, which is what's going on behind the scenes, you know, like replacing old transformers with new, more robust ones, you know, replacing like some sort of field around the critical equipment. Of course, it's going to cost a lot of money, and it is, but I mean, we're about to lose everything, so it's worth it. But inevitably, kind of pointless at this point. So when the grid is inevitably fried, there ought to be the same degree of planning for the submarine cables as well as the satellites. Fortifying critical infrastructure could help us deal with future disasters moving forward. But, and I know how this sounds, doomsday, conspiracy, no. Just look. And just prepare a little. The solar storms sound scary, because they are. But for everything to go wrong, they say everything really has to go wrong. I'm telling you that we're here now, but they say for humans to get stuck in an analog world during this digital age, the GPS would have to die, the electricity would have to cut out, and we would have to lose internet connectivity. We are seeing evidence of that already starting. So I feel confident in saying that something to this degree will hit around August of this year. I'm not 100% sure on that. If that changes, and I'm hoping that I get more specifics any day, all the time, I'm working on it all the time, I will share that to the best of my ability. But truth and authenticity is what has led me on my path, and I continue to push forward in that way. So I do apologize if I'm wrong, because I do feel like I've somewhat failed a little bit in not making sense of this until I finally clued in over the last couple of months that, oh shit, everything that I've been seeing is like happening right now, which is why you guys will see that there's going to be a lot of public the prophecy is nigh type of speak, because essentially that's true. Everything that was, you know, biblically prophesized, this great time of ascension that Jesus helped prepare us for, is now. We have a very, very great opportunity as we are all awakening, you know, to truth, to authenticity, to love in this world, to rebuild a society based on that. So, you know, it really does boil down to each one that so far is choosing that similar path, you know, standing up for what is right. Whatever that means to you, where you are in your lives, to whatever degree, you know, every single one of us is doing something different. And in this turn of ascension, right, everyone's got a completely different role. And some are, you know, public, some are not, some are, it's just, you got to just be a good human and just remember that as all this stuff starts to go down, the most important thing is that we take care of each other. Everyone should be working on expanding your own consciousness, raising your vibration, and just being true to you. We are going to be rebuilding society to a certain degree. Everyone needs to ready themselves. Governments are readying themselves, you know, more significantly than they would for a pandemic. It's in the news now. This is rated to class 4 out of the, whereas COVID, I think, landed at number 1. So you guys will be hearing more about this, you know, every day as things change. And if COVID was any example, the toilet paper, humans need to do better this time. For real, we need to all do better than that. You can't be harboring stuff from your neighbors during a major global catastrophe. It just can't happen. Last weekend we were hit repeatedly, over and over and over. Thankfully, we only reached a G4. There was, effects to all three of the points mentioned: satellites, GPS, radio cables, etc. Now, the areas, as mentioned, that are going to be the most affected run between the 45th, I believe, degree of latitude and the 55th. And then, of course, depending on where they're hit, the effects will kind of minimize with distance. But anything that carries power, a substation or larger generation plants, you don't want to be by those. That would be my recommendation. So in the event of an impending major storm, try to make sure that you're not anywhere near any of these larger stations of power. And then just try to make sure, that you guys are maybe grounding around your homes, fireproofing, depending on where you are in the world. Here in Canada and here in BC, where we are right now, we need to be all doing this right now anyways, because I promise that unfortunately this year is going to trump last year significantly. And then add the solar storms to the mix. We need to all start preparing for some stuff.
Known as an X-class flare, prompting organizations like the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration to sound the alarm on the arrival of a fairly large coronal mass ejection. But you probably didn't even notice, because the energy of the storm was harmlessly absorbed by Earth's magnetic field. It was big enough, though, that people living as far south as Iowa could see the aurora borealis, and that doesn't happen often. One of the biggest CMEs to happen in recorded human history was the Carrington event of 1859. Thankfully, we were not as reliant on electricity then, but it was big enough to disrupt the world's entire telegraph system. Telegraph operators reported getting shocked by their devices, and auroras were seen as far south as Cuba. If another Carrington-style event happened today, it'd be a much bigger deal.
So in an extreme case, when you have a very, very large magnetic storm, it can actually take out power and destroy transformers over a large region of the United States, for example. And it's not localized like a tornado or a hurricane or flooding. It is regional, multiple states, like the whole New England area or the South, or all of the West Coast, depending on how the power grid is oriented and where these where the energy is absorbed.
While that sounds really scary, it's astronauts in space that have to be worried about solar flares and the radiation they carry. One solar storm in 1989 caused a massive blackout in Canada and gave the maximum yearly radiation dose to cosmonauts aboard the Mir space station in a matter of hours.
Not only does our Earth's magnetic field protect us, also the atmosphere also absorbs a lot of energy that just never gets down to the surface. So we don't feel a lot of the radiation and that sort of thing because it's absorbed by the atmosphere. But out in space, especially when you have astronauts, for example, on the International Space Station, even though it safely not safely, but it is protected within the Earth's magnetic cocoon, it's still radiation impacts, and we are on constant.
The public is now slowly, in some areas of the world, being told that they need to start preparing for big power blackouts. And Canada has 3 major power grids: the Western, the Eastern, and the Quebec. The worst geomagnetic storm in our history was the Carrington event, labeled as a G5 level storm, which caused sparks to fly from doorknobs, blocked telegraph wires. They could use the telegraphs without plugging them in. It was impossible to communicate. A National Academy of Sciences report summarized extensive damage to satellites would compromise everything from communications to national security. And that's just the beginning. Extensive damage to the power grid would compromise absolutely everything: healthcare, transportation, agriculture, emergency response, water, sanitation, the financial industry, the continuity of government. Recovery from a Carrington-class storm is going to take us up to 10 years and cost trillions of dollars. Lives will be lost. And to make things a little more serious to you guys, the Carrington event is only a benchmark by the happenstance of it just hitting the Earth. A lot more powerful storms have just snuck right by us. Like in 2012, Earth was literally almost annihilated by a 9-day miss. Like, this stuff isn't as rare as we thought. We've just significantly been in a lull period for larger galactic activity. So 2 years ago, there was another close miss. If it had hit and anybody was left here, we'd still be picking up the pieces right now. We are incredibly fortunate so far. And we're incredibly fortunate that this is what's coming. So what do? We need to just prepare calmly and compassionately. Let's just not leave appliances plugged in. Let's watch our water use and consumption. Perhaps start preparing to replenish, emergency supplies, get emergency supplies. Make an emergency kit if you don't have one. I see that the travel restrictions also, like, before that's going down, like, I mean, like, by fires, not by the government, well, both, but there's lots of things that you can find for great information, even on the gov.bc website. I'll link it below, hopefully. They have links for, what to do in the event of a major power outage and things like that. So you can find information for yourselves. They have different things like on how to make a plan to connect with your neighbors, a safety plan for family to connect if you guys need to evacuate or travel to a new place suddenly with very, 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 very short notice. But I assure you that we will all make it through together. And the more of us that recognize the importance of taking care of everyone around us, making sure that you're checking in if stuff starts to go down. Don't just be out for yourself. Think about maybe the little old guy down the street whose wife passed away and doesn't have kids anywhere nearby. Maybe check on that guy. Make sure that guy knows what's up. What if he can't hear anything? Just think about the people that are around you, because this is bigger than COVID. This is real, really, and it really is going to happen. It's happening now. It's just slowly starting to happen, which is what we knew would happen as we approach a solar maximum. We reach a steady peak. The peak will happen. The biggest, event that could happen based on probability again and history, which we can, will help us, but doesn't guarantee anything. And then once that hits, we know that at least from the sun's perspective, for 10 years or 11 years or so, we can work on rebuilding and preparing that should the next solar maximum be anywhere near as powerful as what's going to knock this society on its butt. We're prepared and we're protected and we'll be ready. We'll be ready. We can't really prepare significantly for this, but we can be ready for the next one. And that all starts with also changing the way we do things. So, based on what I see, we should all start right now preparing. Just by getting things ready. Like I said, just have an emergency kit, have an emergency plan, try to stay informed, do research, be a good human. Stand up for yourselves and stand up for others. We can no longer deny what is good, what is bad. So remember that. Keep calling your power, your energy back to you, because we are breaking worlds and we are rebuilding worlds simultaneously, and it's happening faster than it ever has before. It is more powerful than it has ever been before. All of the darkness that we have overcome, you guys know what I'm talking about. Even just these past few weeks and months have been some of the most intense, and I know that everyone is feeling this crazy energetic shift into something that is so good, so light. And I'm getting chills all the time. I'm seeing significantly increases in synchronicities. This is happening. And it is happening because of those who were choosing to believe in something better, not just for ourselves, but for ourselves and for the world. We're going against everything that has been programmed and instilled in all of us since we've been born into this broken world. And we're winning over ourselves, like within ourselves, we are winning. So if you guys are wanting to know, who's going to be significant, famous, a hero to you in 2025, the people right in your life, the people who love, the people who share love, the people who hold safety for one another throughout the important things, your neighbors, your mother, your fathers, your sons, your daughters. It's going to be the people that just walk through this world as ordinary people. Those are going to be the people who are shining bright like stars, like actual stars, because energy doesn't lie. It cannot lie. And that is what is so beautiful about what is happening, is that people are realizing that. People are realizing that you hold more star power by just being a good person than by having followers or having money or having power or this and that. It's literally about who you are as a person, and that is what is happening to this world. And it is about time. Like, it's so beautiful. It is such a long-awaited, homecoming. I just keep getting chills, and just this feeling of wow. And it could just, happen overnight, just like this world. Overnight, everything is changing. So hold on to your faith, not even just your faith, trust in your faith, trust in who you're becoming, trust in what is happening, and trust that what is happening is good. Because if you're on the side that I think you're on, of yourself, it's not us against the world or us against the government, it's us against ourselves. If you're on the side of it being better as a human, being better as yourself, being better for others, this is your time. It's time for all of us to just be better, for everyone. Bright times are ahead, my loves. Bright, bright times. Thank you for watching.